Hey guys, tonight we journey deep into the shadowed heart of ancient Europe, where the forests are thick, the roads are few, and the warriors waiting in the trees definitely aren't here to sell you candles. You're about to slip into the dense woodlands of Germania. Yes, that place that made even the Romans wet their greaves. The fires are lit, the war paint is fresh, and unless you brought a very convincing offering or happen to be fluent in Old Frankish, you probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're listening from somewhere interesting, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where everyone is drifting off from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge through undergrowth so thick it feels alive. The air is damp, humming with insects and the low rustle of wind through ancient trees. You're somewhere beyond the Rhine, in a place maps don't bother to name yet. The sun barely cuts through the canopy above, casting speckled gold onto mossy ground beneath your feet. And ahead, there it is, the glow of torchlight, not the clean kind from Roman villas. No, this is raw flame, sputtering against night, held high by hands stained with earth and blood. These are not cities. They're clusters of wooden huts, ringed by crude fences and animal skulls. No roads, no signs, just footpaths worn into the earth by generations of bare feet and bone-soled sandals. Here, the idea of civilization is a rumor whispered by captives and travelers. A group of warriors stands around a central fire, their voices low and gravelly, speaking a tongue that rattles like a brook over stones. They're tall, most of them, with pale eyes and wild hair twisted into ropes. The forest has shaped them, bodies lean, scarred, and half covered by hides and furs. Some wear leather tunics smeared with ash. Others go bare-chested in the cool evening air, their skin daubed with dark war paint, half tattoo, half intimidation tactic. One man, if man is the right word, grinds a boar's tusk into the edge of his axe with a calm that's more threatening than rage. Another checks the feathers on his javelins, mumbling a charm under his breath. Fearsome? Oh yes, but also methodical, almost ritualistic in their readiness. These are not mindless barbarians, as Rome liked to say. These are people honed by hardship, united by tribe, and driven by an unshakable belief in their gods, their honor, and the unforgiving land they call home. You glance back toward the trail you came from. It's already vanished. The forest swallows everything. Historians still argue whether these warriors were loosely unified tribes or just chaotic raiding bands, but from here, standing beside their fire, you feel the structure, even if it's the kind that gets you gutted for breaking a blood oath. One fringe theory claims that the forest paths they used were sacred routes, walked only by initiates and shamans. You can believe it. The silence between torchlit circles hums with reverence, or maybe just warning. It's hard to tell the difference. You smell iron and pine. The fire crackles. Meat roasts. Occasionally, someone barks a laugh that sounds more like a threat. You want to relax, but everything here feels temporary, like the moment you let your guard down. Something will emerge from the woods and teach you what true fear looks like. And that's what Rome never understood. These warriors weren't just fighting for land or power. They were fighting because this was the way. The forest isn't something to be tamed. It's a partner, a hiding place, a weapon. A Roman poet once wrote that Germania was a land of shadows and sharpened teeth. A bit dramatic, sure, but tonight it fits. You sit on a stump, feeling the heat from the fire soak into your bones. A young warrior tosses you a hunk of bread, so hard it nearly breaks your nose. Hospitality, in their own way. You nod thanks, trying to mimic their guttural greeting. They laugh. One of them claps you on the back with enough force to nearly knock your ribs loose. You're not one of them. Not yet. Maybe never. But tonight, you're not an enemy either. Tomorrow, who knows? The warriors rise at first light, and so do you. Sort of. You're stiff from sleeping on roots, blinking through a fog of smoke and cold dew. There's no rooster crowing, just the low boom of a war horn in the distance and the thrum of tension in the air. Someone is preparing for something, And if the body paint and sharpened iron weren't enough of a clue, the sudden absence of children and elders in the clearing seals it. You follow quietly as the warriors move toward the edge of the forest, feet soundless on loamy earth. They're not stomping, not shouting. This isn't a chaotic rush. This is a procession, a ritual, maybe even a prayer with blades. Historians still argue whether Germanic warriors truly went berserk, or if that's just Roman propaganda. But as one man begins smearing a dark paste over his eyes, muttering to the trees, you're inclined to believe that some of them definitely had a switch they could flip. Today's raid is against a rival tribe, not the Romans, yet. But you get the sense that war, for these people, is never more than a breath away. It's both personal and impersonal. The insult from a chieftain's nephew spirals into a dozen deaths and a new legend. It doesn't take much to light the fuse. You spot one warrior with a necklace made entirely from teeth. Human, probably. Another with a raven feather tucked behind his ear, whispering to it like a friend. Are they mad? Maybe, but not stupid. Every movement has purpose. Every silence a warning. You pass through a thicket, and suddenly the trees thin. There's a small hill ahead, and beyond it, the enemy's camp. A crude palisade of sharpened stakes. Smoke rising from behind. Your warriors fan out, ducking low, speaking in hand signs and grunts. You stay close to a man called Wido, whose expression hasn't changed since yesterday. He gives you a nod. That means stay behind him, not because he likes you, but because if you're in front, you'll die and be in his way. They charge at dawn's first blush. No trumpet, no dramatic speeches. Just a sound, half scream, half bark, that rips from dozens of throats and floods over the enemy like a curse. Spears fly, clubs swing. The first man over the palisade takes a blade to the leg, doesn't even flinch. He bites the attacker's face. That seems to work just fine. You want to look away, but you can't. There's a rhythm to the violence, a kind of grim choreography that reminds you of waves breaking. Chaos, but practice. You see young boys, maybe 14, rushing in alongside seasoned veterans. And not all of them survive. But no one stops, not even to mourn. One of the fringe theories about these warriors claims they drank hallucinogenic brews before battle, seeing their gods among the flames. You can't confirm that here, but there's a man beside you smiling a little too much as he swings a flaming branch into a thatched roof. You edge away from him. Respectfully, the battle ends fast. Not clean, but fast. The enemy flees into the woods or falls where they stood. Your group doesn't cheer. No triumphal parade. Just a silent gathering of the wounded and the quick looting of anything vaguely useful. Bronze tools, dried meat, a few half-burned icons. One older warrior kneels and presses a handful of earth to his forehead. It's not just about victory. It's about remembering the dead, even if some of them died screaming under your blade. And then you're gone. The fire rises behind you, but you're already disappearing into the trees again, like ghosts. No trace, no mercy, no name. You reach the forest edge by midday, and the group splits. Some return to the village. Others vanish without a word, off to tend to their own family plots or wander into the deeper woods where, allegedly, the spirits live. Wido hands you a skin of bitter liquid that smells like moss and something vaguely illegal. You drink anyway. Your hands still shake. That night, the celebration is quiet. A smoke board is hung above a pit. Flatbread is passed around. A girl sings in a minor key, eyes closed, like she's channeling something older than music. There's laughter, yes, but also a heaviness. You notice some places left empty around the fire. Not everyone came back. One elder tells a story of a time the sky turned red, and wolves walked upright to speak with men. Everyone listens. No one laughs. Myths and memory blur out here. There's a scholar's theory that Germanic oral traditions were stronger than we think, that the forest itself became a library of sound and symbol carried in blood and bone. You believe it. Every word tonight feels etched into the air. You lie down under a blanket of animal hide. Maurice the half-wolf dog curled against your side. You didn't bring Maurice. He just showed up. No one questions it. You close your eyes. And for the first time, you realize that surviving out here isn't about strength. It's about becoming part of something older, more fluid. something with roots deeper than Rome's clean marble columns. The next morning breaks with a brittle chill that slips under your cloak and settles in your bones. You stretch, so from sleeping on uneven ground, and rise to the sounds of scraping and sharpening. Blades are being cleaned not for show, but because rust is a killer no warrior will risk. Nearby, Wido is whittling a new spear shaft from ash wood, humming a low, tuneless melody. His calm is unnerving. You wonder if he remembers a man whose chest he caved in yesterday. Probably doesn't care. As you rub warmth into your fingers, you catch sight of two warriors helping an injured companion bind a deep wound with what looks like moss and cobwebs. It's not just survival, it's improvisation. This tribe doesn't have Roman physicians, but they got centuries of trial and error, and honestly, spider silk is surprisingly antiseptic. You notice a woman watching the treatment process, eyes narrowed. She isn't a healer, but she'll remember what she sees and try it herself next time. Knowledge here is passed by imitation, not instruction. And if you get it wrong, well, you won't get a second chance. Today, you're not marching to battle. Today is about ritual. The fallen from yesterday's clash must be honored, or at least dealt with. There's no unified religion here, not like Rome's pantheon or Christianity's coming tide. But there are patterns, beliefs braided from trees, storm, and stone. The bodies are brought to a clearing where oaks stand like silent witnesses. Warriors gather, painted faces solemn, each holding a sprig of yew or holly. The dead are not buried deep. They're laid out on wooden biers and covered with bark and flowers. It's less about preservation and more about connection, to earth, to forest, to spirit. The smoke from small fires carries prayers you can't understand, but you feel them in your teeth. One body is set apart, adorned in a cloak of teal and russet. That's Halgar, you're told, a chieftain's cousin. His death was brave and bloody, and his name will be spoken for 3 winters. Maybe more if the story gets better with time. And it will. Here, legends age like mead. Stronger, sweeter, a bit fuzzy on the details. Someone begins drumming, slow and deliberate, not for entertainment, but to mark the soul's passing. You don't know the beat, but your body responds anyway. The rhythm is primal, before language, before fear. Historians still argue whether these funerals were meant to celebrate life or ward off haunting spirits. Maybe both. There's laughter and tears. Someone dances a spiral around the fire, scattering millet. Others chant. You feel the ground vibrating. And for a second, you wonder the earth is alive. Out here, it kind of is. As twilight deepens, the ceremony shifts. A storyteller, old, bent, and wrapped in furs, steps forward, leaning on a gnarled staff that might be older than he is. He doesn't shout, doesn't perform. He simply begins. There was once a man who ate the heart of a bear and dreamed of fire. The crowd leans in. So, do you? It's not about facts. It's about essence. Memory shaped into tale. The bear becomes a symbol, the fire a curse, and the man is all of them. Every listener finds their own meaning, including you. Later, as embers crackle and stars press down, a younger warrior sidles up beside you. She's got a scar running across her cheekbone and eyes like polished flint. She tells you about her first kill, not with pride, with a kind of resigned clarity. It's not the killing that stays with you, she says. It's the quiet after. You nod. You haven't killed anyone. But the quiet after is starting to feel familiar. There's a bowl of fermented berry mash being passed around now. And you take a sip before realizing it's stronger than anything with a warning label. Someone laughs at your expression. Someone else adds a piece of smoked eel to your plate. It's hospitality, sure, but also a test. Can you hang with the warriors without embarrassing yourself? You try. You really try. An owl hoots from the trees. Heads turn. Silence falls. The elders whisper. You catch only fragments. Omen, watcher. Velita sign. The mood doesn't sour, but it does shift. The owl might mean nothing. Or it might mean a war is coming. This is not a culture that bets against fate. One fringe theory claims the Germanic tribes believed owls carried the voices of the dead. Another argues they were seen as spies from rival tribes. You don't know which version is correct, but the way the crowd stares into the trees makes you shiver. That night, you sleep wrapped in layers. The cloak they lent you now soaked with wood smoke and sweat. Maurice curls against your chest, snoring lightly. You watch the stars appear one by one, like the eyes of long-forgotten gods blinking open. You wonder how many warriors buried here ever dreamed of peace. Probably none. You wake to the scent of damp earth and cold ash. Morning in the camp is a hushed or busy. No shouting, no rush, just a purposeful scuff of feet, the occasional snore of a horse, the steady rhythm of survival. You stretch, shake out your limbs, and make your way toward the fires, where the remains of roasted boar now resemble abstract sculpture. A group of warriors are preparing to train, not in formal rows or with instructors shouting from atop platforms, but in clusters, like family members play fighting with sticks that could still crack your skull open. This isn't Roman discipline. It's more like trial by bruising. You're invited to join. To learn is to live, someone says, shoving a wooden spear into your hands. You try to mimic their stance, wide-legged, knees bent, but your grip is awkward. The warrior across from you grins like a fox and lunges. You yelp and hop backward, and somewhere in the trees, a raven laughs. They don't train to impress. They train to remember. Every move is a recall of lived threat. Most of them were fighting by 10, injured by 12, buried a sibling by 14. This is not childhood as you knew it. Childhood here comes armed. One woman, broad-shouldered with long braids wrapped in bronze rings, shows you a move that involves ducking low and sweeping with the haft of the spear. You try. You fail. She claps your shoulder anyway. Not bad. She lies gently. You spot their shields lined up nearby, leaning against a felled tree. They're not uniform. The shapes vary, some oval, some round. Many are painted. Snarling wolves, coiling snakes, sun split in two. One bears a spiral, oddly similar to the one you saw on the chapel door back home, though here surrounded by leaves and claws. Symbols are slippery. They migrate. Historians still argue whether these painted shields were used for practical identification or spiritual protection. You suspect both. Everything in this world feels dual purpose. Knife and symbol, food and offering, shelter and shrine. A skinny teenager with wild hair and a cracked front tooth challenges you next. He's faster than the last opponent and definitely meaner. When he knocks the spear from your hands, he doesn't gloat. He nods and says, "You'll do." You don't know if that's praise or a threat. Lunch is cold porridge mixed with dried fruits and slivered nuts. You eat slowly, savoring it. Hunger makes even glue taste gourmet. You listen as two men debate. One swears the Romans have tamed lions in their camps. Another insists the lions are just big dogs with better marketing. A third claims to have seen a Roman chariot with blades on the wheels, cut his cousin in half. You ask if that's true. The answer, a shrug and a smirk. This tribe's relationship with the Roman world is a strange mix of awe, hatred, and curiosity. Some of them wear Roman loot, brooches, bits of chainmail, even a brass belt buckle repurposed as a hair clasp. Others spit every time the empire's name comes up. The Germanic lands weren't unified, but Roman expansion made them something they'd never been before, angry in the same direction. You're led to the weapons tent, which is more of a pile with a tarp. There, you're shown the ironwork. Axes with crescent blades, short swords, wicked-looking hooks. No two weapons are identical. These aren't mass-produced. They're personal, shaped to a warrior's hand and habit. You pick up a seeks, a short, broad-bladed knife with a heavy hilt, and immediately regret how heavy it is. It would split firewood with ease, or a rib cage. Next to you, someone is engraving symbols into their blade with what looks like a fishbone dipped in ash. Not for luck, they tell you, to make the steel remember. Remember what? My rage. They say, dead serious. You nod and pretend that's normal. A boy no older than 9 is sharpening his sling stones, humming a lullaby. His mother watches nearby, plucking feathers from a goose. This is a warrior's cradle, and childhood is more of a training montage than a tender memory. You wonder what stories are told to lull them to sleep. Probably not about bunnies and balloons. More likely, tales of bear men in the north, river spirits that steal voices, or that god who lost his hand to the wolf. You've heard of Odin, sure, but here, he feels less like a figure of mythology and more like someone who might show up at dinner, drink all the mead, and leave the table cursed. One fringe theory says some warriors fought under divine frenzy called berserking, fueled by mushrooms, madness, or bloodlust. The truth? Still debated. What's not debated is the terrifying presence some of these fighters could summon. Howling, foaming, immune to pain, like rage given flesh. You've seen a glimpse of that already, and you hope not to again. Before dusk, you're taught how to build a proper brush blind for hiding in undergrowth. If they can't see you, they can't kill you, the instructor says matter of fact. It's a weird comfort. You practice weaving branches, layering bark, and smearing yourself with mud to break up your outline. It feels like becoming part of the forest, or maybe prey. As night curls its cold fingers through the trees, you find yourself beside a fire again, warming your numb hands. Maurice, as usual, is curled like a cinnamon bun against your hip, twitching in some unknowable dream. Across the flames, Wido is recounting a raid that took place under a blood moon. He says the sky turned red to bless them. Another warrior snorts. Or to warn them. The group laughs, but uneasily. You lean back, staring into the canopy. Somewhere out there, the Roman world hums with roads and law and aqueducts. But here, under these stars, you feel something older, cruder, but also, in a strange way, freer, and definitely scarier. You dream of wolves and waking drums. When morning breaks, it's with fog instead of fire, low, silvery mist coiling around the tree trunks like some ancient spirit unsure where to land. You pull your cloak tighter, stepping over roots slick with dew, and make your way toward the center of camp. There's an energy in the air, restless and focused, like the trees themselves are holding their breath. Today, you're told, the chieftain speaks. The word chieftain might conjure up a great hall and ceremonial robes in your head, but here, it's simpler, rawer. The gathering takes place in a clearing ringed with standing stones, moss-covered and worn down to stubs. Warriors, elders, and wide-eyed children sit or squat in a crescent as a tall figure steps forward. He wears a tunic dyed deep indigo, the color of storm clouds, with a carved bone pendant hanging from his neck. His beard is streaked with iron gray, and his arms are tattooed with what look like trees, antlers, and serpent loops. His voice is low, measured, and he doesn't raise it. He doesn't need to. You pick up just enough words to understand that trouble stirs near the river border. Roman patrols, maybe, or something worse. Renegade, deserters, or even spirits mistaken for men. The world is changing, he says, and the crowd listens like the forest itself is listening too. He speaks not just of war, but of signs. Crows flying at dusk, deer birthing too early, frost forming in spring. This is a culture where nature is not scenery. It's scripture. Historians still argue whether Germanic tribes truly believed the land spoke to them or simply read it the way you read headlines. Either way, they paid attention. The speech ends not with cheers but with silence, a solemn nod from the chieftain, and then the group breaks into smaller discussions. Plans are formed without much ceremony. Who goes where, who carries what, who stays to watch the children. Authority here is embarked. It's absorbed. A younger warrior named Bruni nudges you. Want to see something cursed? Honestly, no, but curiosity wins. You follow him to a thicket where he unrolls a deer hide covered in runes, bone charms, and a dried human hand. Found it near the old barrow, he says, as if that explains everything. You don't ask what barrow. Some knowledge is heavier than it looks. He explains it a kind of warning, left by a rival tribe or a wayward spirit. The hand is curled in a strange shape, like it was clutching something invisible. Bruni pokes at it with a stick. Could be sorcery. Could be a joke. That's the thing about this world. The line between sacred and prank is razor thin, and usually smeared with blood. Nearby, a group of older women are chanting around a smoldering pile of herbs. Not singing, chanting. It's rhythmic and low, the kind of sound that gets into your bones and refuses to leave. One of them holds a twig doll, limbs bound with red thread. Another is scattering crushed eggshells. This could be healing. It could be cursing. It could be both. You ask one of them what they're doing. She looks up, her eyes like river stones. We're asking the land to be patient. You don't know how to respond, so you nod like that makes sense. It kind of does. Later, you're brought to the edge of a cliff overlooking a narrow valley. You're told to listen, not just with your ears, but with your skin. At first, you hear nothing. But then, wind shifting through branches, water running over stone, the clatter of hooves far below. It's not noise. It's pattern. The warriors learn to interpret this like musicians sight reading a score. And then, you hear it, metal against rock. Not much. Just enough. The older warrior beside you mutters, "Roman scouts." And just like that, the casual becomes critical. The camp shifts gears instantly. Fires doused, pads swept, tracks disguised. Children bundled and hidden. Supplies buried in caches marked by seemingly random stones. You're handed a pack you didn't ask for and told to keep low, stay light. You don't question it. You just move. The Germanic tribes didn't build castles. They didn't need to. The land was their defense. Dense forests, twisting rivers, unpredictable weather. You're reminded of a mainstream historical note. Roman generals complained often about the terrain in Germania, calling it hostile and alive. Maybe they weren't being metaphorical. Your group splits into 3s and 4s, disappearing into gullies and underbrush. Communication is mostly through gesture. A raised hand, 2 fingers pointed west. A bird call. You realize how much language slows people down. That night, you don't camp so much as perch. You're wedged between roots, wrapped in wool, listening to the silent stretch. Maurice huddles beside you, ears twitching. The moon is a thin smear behind clouds. Someone nearby whispers about a creature in the woods. A massive stag with burning eyes. Follows battle, he says. Tastes death. You pretend to laugh, but part of you believes him. In this world, metaphor wears real teeth. Before you sleep, you see a warrior carving something into a strip of bark. You ask what it is. A memory, he says, for my son if I don't return. The bark is small. The words are few. But the weight behind them is enormous. As you close your eyes, you realize that everything here is both fragile and unkillable. Life is brittle. But the culture, the stories, the quiet rituals, they endure even when flesh fails. The Romans never quite broke this world. They only burned parts of it. And like any forest fire, the roots often survive. Dawn doesn't so much break as seep. A dull gray mist curls around the underbrush, the kind that makes everything feel muffled and slow, as if the forest itself is still waking, unsure whether it wants to rise or roll over and sleep another century. You're stiff, cold, and vaguely damp. The price you pay for a night spent curled under twisted roots with your cloak doing a terrible impression of a blanket. Maurice stirs beside you. Grumbling cat complaints in a half-purr, half-growl tone that means he'd rather be indoors, which, of course, doesn't exist here. You follow Bruni and 2 others as they scout the ridgeline. No one speaks unless they have to. Communication flows through glances, finger points, and, occasionally, a grunt with at least 3 layers of meaning. You've gotten good at reading grunts. The trail leads through a patch of burnt birch, black trunks rising like skeletal fingers clawing at the sky. Romans again. Bruni mutters. You recognize the pattern. Trees felled in a crude ring. The faint remains of a campfire, and a boot print too square to belong to a local. Even the smell is different. Charcoal, oil, iron. The Romans left their mark like perfume on a pillow, even when they were trying to stay hidden. You stop to examine the boot print. Historians still argue whether Roman auxiliary forces were used primarily for their local knowledge, or just as disposable scouts. Either way, they didn't always come back. And when they did, they spoke of shadows moving too fast, of strange calls in the night, of warriors who bled from the mouth and still kept running. That part's probably exaggerated. Probably. Bruni picks up a rusted Roman fibula, a brooch used to fasten a cloak. Still warm, he says with a smirk. You know he's kidding. But you also step back. You press on toward a thicket of yew trees, their twisted limbs heavy with ancient weight. In the heart of the grove sits something you didn't expect. A shrine. Not the kind with candles and kneeling benches, but a circle of stones surrounding a moss-covered idol. Vaguely human, vaguely bird-like, definitely unsettling. Feathers, bones, and faded ribbons dangle from branches. Bruni kneels, touches the earth, and murmurs something low. You follow suit, not because you believe, but because in this place, disbelief feels dangerous. He tells you this is a war spirit's nest, a place where warriors once came to ask for strength or forgiveness. Depends on who you ask. One version says the idol drinks nightmares. Another says it collects the names of the dead and whispers them to the crows. You try not to make eye contact with the thing. By midday, you regroup with others, each reporting their own quiet horrors. One saw hoof prints leading nowhere. Another found a wolf carcass, throat slashed with surgical precision. Someone else heard singing in a language that sounded too smooth to be native. Latin, says an older scout grimly. They pray when they're afraid. You march silently now, not out of stealth, but reverence. You're entering what the tribes call the Shaded Hollow, a place half claimed by the dead. No one lives here, but everyone has stories about it. You dismiss it as superstition, if not for the sudden cold and the inexplicable pressure building behind your eyes. A raven lands nearby, unusually silent, head cocked as if it understands the plot better than you do. That's a bad one, someone mutters. Left-eye raven sees your death. You look away. So does everyone else. At the hollow's edge, you find something disturbing. Roman shields propped in a row like gravestones, their surfaces crudely hacked and defaced. Beside them, 3 helmets rest on posts. No heads inside, but you get the impression they were recently occupied. The message is clear. This is a warning. One of the warriors spits. Too clean. No blood. They were taken. No one says by what. You keep walking. Eventually, you reach the watchstone, a tall, weather-worn slab marked with concentric circles and jagged runes. It's older than anyone in your group, possibly older than language itself. Local legend says it watches over travelers, and sometimes, if you speak the right name at the right time, it answers. You don't test that theory today. Instead, you rest, not comfortably, but just enough to stretch your legs and chew some dried meat that tastes like smoked leather and sadness. The warriors fan out, posting lookouts in trees and gullies. Even Maurice is alert now, his singe fur bristling. You glance at the sky. It's still overcast, but the light feels wrong. Too yellow, like a bruise before it fades. You remember stories of storms that weren't weather, of clouds that formed in silence and never moved. The Germanic tribes feared such signs, but they also used them. You're reminded of a fringe theory, that tribal shamans could bend storms with bone flutes and carved idols. Probably nonsense. Still, you wouldn't mind a weather app right about now. Night falls like a trapdoor. 1 minute it's dusk, the next it's velvet black, stitched with stars you don't recognize. The campfire is small, banked low under a lean-to of woven branches. You huddle close with the others. The conversation is quiet, mostly stories, some real, some dreamlike. Bruni tells you about the Iron Hag, a spirit said to live in the marshes. She smells like vinegar and screams like a deer giving birth, he says cheerfully. If you hear her, run toward it. Away is where she gets you. You don't sleep well after that. But eventually, you do drift off, soothed by the rhythm of breath, the occasional crack of the fire, and the knowledge that for tonight, the enemy is far away, or at least not screaming yet. In the quiet just before sleep, you remember something the chieftain said that morning. The forest takes what it wants. We only borrow space. That thought follows you into your dreams, where the trees whisper in a language you almost understand. You wake with that disoriented jolt of someone who spent the night in a place that doesn't particularly care whether they wake up or not. The fire's a ring of ash. The forest breathes in cool silence, and the others are already stirring. Maurice is gone, but you spot him moments later, perched on a root with his tail flicking, very much alive and judging you for sleeping in. Bruni tosses you a chunk of stale bread and gestures. Time to move. You descend into low country now, wetter and softer, the earth squishing underfoot. Your boots grow heavier with mud, and mosquitoes launch tiny sieges on every exposed inch of skin. Nature's arrows, someone grumbles, slapping at the air, You'd laugh. But you're too busy defending your ears from being claimed by insects. This is marshland, a place that smells like rotting secrets and sounds like dripping guilt. It's also where the fiercest warriors are said to be buried, not because they like the view, but because the bog preserves what the earth would normally devour. You've heard tales of bodies pulled from these waters, skin like dark wax, hair still intact, eyes closed as if sleeping off particularly rough battle. Historians still argue whether those were sacred burials or sacrifices, or both. You stop when Bruni raises his fist. There, ahead, half sunken and glistening like oil, is a Roman helmet, not worn, just sitting there on the edge of the water, like someone left it mid-thought. Next to it, partially submerged, is a hand, just a hand, and it's clutching a bone flute. You feel your stomach drop. Marsh witch, someone whispers, but Bruni doesn't flinch. He picks up the flute with a strip of cloth, wraps it, and tucks it into his satchel. They'll want this, he says, which is both reassuring and ominous. You march on. By mid-morning, you reach an abandoned waystone marked with old tribal symbols. One of the older warriors, Eirik, kneels and wipes moss away, revealing a carved horse surrounded by broken circles. He spits. Bad omen. Protection mark's been shattered. You lean in. It looks exactly like the chapel mark back in the village. Broken spiral. Incomplete. Distorted. That image clings to your thoughts like smoke. Eventually, the landscape shifts again. Marsh gives way to stone. Here, in a clearing rimmed with old oaks, stand the remains of a Roman outpost. Not one of the big, beautiful ones you see in history books. This is more of a temporary fort. Wooden stakes, rotting beams, a half-fallen tower. It's silent. The kind of silence that says everything important already happened here. Inside the gate, you find the signs of struggle. Broken arrows, torn fabric, and blood. Too much blood for no bodies. The warriors fan out, swords drawn. You trail after Bruni, stepping over what you think might have once been a cooking pot, but now looks like an iron turtle shell. He stops at a crude altar. Not Roman. This is tribal, a totem formed from bones, feathers, and braided reeds mounted on a sharpened stake. Around it are runes burned into bark and stone. This is fresh, Bruni mutters. Ours. Which would be comforting, if not for the fact that it's standing in the heart of a Roman fort. There's a rustle behind you. You turn too fast, trip on a loose rock, and land face first in dust. When you look up, someone's laughing softly. A girl, maybe 15, in ragged teal fabric, barefoot, eyes too bright. You're not from here, she says. You blink. No one else seems to see her. She steps closer. They think the spiral protects them, she whispers. But it only works if it's whole. Then she's gone. Just gone. You don't mention it. Instead, you help gather anything useful from the ruined fort. Dried meat, broken arrowheads, a map half burned. The others are grim but calm. This is the work of their people. After all, they knew the Romans were here. They know they're always here, somewhere, pressing like a tide that never quite recedes. By dusk, you reach the overlook. From here, the land spreads like a bruised quilt. Patches of forest, streaks of river, and the faint smoke spirals of distant encampments. Bruni points to a ridge far off, where a flicker of metal catches the dying light. Legion, he says, at least a cohort. You realize that everything up to now has been scouting. This was all prologue. Now it gets real. That night, camp is tense. No fire, just cold rations and whispered plans. You learn how the tribes will move, hit-and-run attacks, false retreats, traps made of sharpened saplings and hidden pits. It's not glorious. It's not even particularly fair. But it works. And here's the part you didn't expect. There's laughter. Real laughter. Someone tells a joke about a Roman who married a goose. And even Maurice makes a weird noise you decide to interpret as amusement. These warriors are terrifying, yes, but they're also human. Sharp edges wrapped in bark and breath and bruises. You sit beside Eirik, who is sharpening a blade that looks older than the Empire itself. You know what scares him, he asks. It's not the swords, not the forests. It's that we don't break the same way. You ask what he means. He grins. When they lose, they mourn. We remember. The wind shifts. Somewhere out there, an owl calls, a long, mournful sound that cuts through the night like a distant war horn. Sleep is scarce. But you doze off eventually, curled into crook of a tree root, Maurice snoring gently at your side, the ghost girl's words whispering over and over. It only works if it whole. You rise before the sun, when the sky is still the color of bruised stone, and the air clings to your skin with cold, damp fingers. Around you, the warriors stir in silence, as if by unspoken rule. No one speaks. They just move, tightening straps, checking blades, smearing streaks of ash beneath their eyes. Even Maurice has gone quiet, crouched low and alert, his tail tucked in like he knows something's coming. You follow Bruni up a slope slick with dew and regret, and from the top, you see it, your first real Roman camp. It's neat. Of course it is. Square and symmetrical, with crisp rows of tents and palisades, and those banners fluttering like smug decorations of order. You spot the bright red cloaks, the glint of segmented armor, the silver trim on a commander's helm, catching the first thread of sunrise. And in your gut, a strange mix of awe and nausea. The warriors crouch among the trees, like wolves sizing up a bear. You see fingers tighten around spear shafts, hear the creak of bowstrings being tested. But they wait, always wait. Patience is survival. The Germanic tribes never fought on Rome's terms. That's how they stayed alive. Bruni gestures, and you descend the hill in pairs, sticking to the shadows. The goal is an all-out clash. Not yet. Today is about disruption. Raids. Fear. You're given a task. Help Eirik lay a line of caltrops, small iron stars with spikes jutting in every direction. One always points up. Simple. Nasty. Effective. You scatter them to brush where patrols might pass, feeling a weird thrill every time one vanishes under a layer of leaves. It's the kind of joy that makes you question your moral alignment. The others do worse. They coat arrowheads in rotberry paste, which causes infections that fester no matter how shallow the wound. They string thin ropes across trails to trip scouts into ravines. They urinate in the enemy's water barrels. Psychological warfare, Bruni mutters, handing you a pouch of powdered mushroom spores. Give this a toss near their cooking tent. It smells like regret and fungus, but you do it anyway. Hours pass, and then, from the tree line, the arrows come. Not a lot, just a dozen, enough to create chaos. You hear the Roman horns blare, see soldiers rush into formation, shields raised in textbook precision, but no one charges. That's the point. This is a game. Confuse, exhaust, undermine. From your perch, you watch a Roman officer bark orders while swatting at biting flies. Another soldier trips on a hidden rope and nearly face-plants into a bush. Two others argue over a missing helmet. Morale doesn't collapse, but it definitely wobbles. You wonder, how many days like this does it take before even a legion starts to unravel? Fear does more than fire. Eirik says beside you, as if reading your mind. It rots faster. He's not wrong. That night, you spy on a Roman camp from a hill, watching them light torches and pace nervously. They're spooked. They'll call for reinforcements. Maybe change position. That's the plan. As you return to your camp, still cloaked in forest shadows, Bruni pulls you aside. You're not just here to observe anymore, he says. You're a part of this. You want to protest. You're not a fighter. You've read books. That's not the same as stabbing someone. But then you remember the fire, the village, the broken circle, the way your friends looked at you like you were a stranger. You nod. The next day you travel, not forward, but laterally, circling the Roman force like wolves around a cart. This stretch of forest grows denser, older. Trees lean in conspiratorially. Moss climbs the trunks like it's trying to escape something below. You hear whispers on the wind. Not real ones, probably, but the kind that make you quicken your pace just in case. At a clearing, you find another shrine. This one is pristine, a perfect spiral etched into stone, surrounded by tokens, wooden amulets, pressed flowers, carved bone figurines. Eleanor kneels and murmurs something in an old tongue. You don't ask what. She places a thread of her hair on the spiral, then steps back. Balance, she says. You move on. That night, you reach a grove said to be sacred to the old gods. No one lights a fire. Instead, they smear their skin with ash and wear twisted wreaths of oak and thorn. It's not fashion. It's camouflage in something more ritual, maybe protection. Eleanor draws a spiral in dirt with a stick, then breaks a line just slightly. This, she whispers, is the broken version. You look. It seems innocent enough, just an opening in the spiral's tail. But when she covers it up again, you shiver. She shows you a page from the hermit's book. It shows the same symbol beside a figure, a half-human, half-shadow thing with no face and too many fingers. Some believe breaking the circle invites what lives between things. She says, you don't sleep much that night. Somewhere beyond the trees, the Roman horns sound again. A warning? A charge? No one reacts. Everyone just waits. When you do finally drift off, you dream of spirals. Not the neat ones, but spirals within spirals, fractal, infinite, consuming. At the center of one stands a figure in teal rags and bare feet. She looks at you, smiles. You're almost ready, she says. Then you wake up. Dew clings to your skin like cold breath. And in the distance, a thin curl of smoke rises from the Roman camp. They're moving. The final battle's not here yet. But you can feel it now, creeping like fog through the undergrowth. The dawn breaks gray and hesitant. The forest holding its breath as you and the warriors prepare for the day ahead. There's no trumpet fanfare, no grand speeches, just a quiet tightening of belts, the clinking of iron and the soft patting of feet on mossy earth. Bruni catches your eye, his gaze steady and unreadable, like he's carrying centuries of battle behind it. You swallow down a lump of nerves and focus on the rhythm of the woods, the rustle of leaves, the distant call of a hawk, the faint drip of morning dew falling from branches. You move deeper into the trees, the air growing cooler and thick with pine scent. The Romans have shifted camp overnight. Their fires now barely visible smoke ghosts through the thinning fog. You keep to the shadows, guided by Bruni's whisper and the occasional snarl from Maurice. It feels like walking a knife's edge. Every step could be the last before a shout or a clash. The silence between the trees is a language you're still learning. Ahead, a narrow trail winds through a stand of ancient oaks, their twisted roots breaking the earth like veins. Bruni signals a halt and points to a shallow pit concealed beneath a woven lattice of branches and leaves, an ambush trap ready for unsuspecting scouts. You crouch beside it, the rough bark biting your palms as you help set sharpened stakes within. The crude craftsmanship contrasts with the precision of the trap. Every spike placed to cause maximum harm without alerting the enemy. Suddenly, a crack echoes, a twig snapping underfoot. The warriors freeze, breaths held tight. For a moment, you think it might be a Roman patrol, but it's only a lone deer, startled and bounding away. The tension eases, but the reminder is clear. Here, nature is both ally and threat. You remember reading that Germanic tribes often use the forest itself as a weapon, blending ritual with warfare in ways that confuse scholars to this day. Historians still argue whether these tactics were born from superstition or pure cunning. As the day wears on, you help lead small raids, darting from cover to cover, harrying supply lines, stealing food and weapons. The warriors fight not for glory but survival. Each skirmish a test of nerve, endurance, and trust. You catch glimpses of their fierce loyalty, their unspoken code etched in scars and quiet glances. At one point, you find yourself face to face with a Roman soldier, his eyes wide with shock and fear. You lower your spear, heart pounding, wondering if mercy is a weapon as sharp as any blade. He stumbles back, and you don't look back as he disappears into the trees. As twilight descends, you gather around a flickering fire. The men share stories of gods and monsters, of ancient rites and forgotten songs. Eleanor pulls out the hermit's book again, tracing the spiral symbol with careful fingers. This fight, she says softly, is more than flesh and blood. It's about belief, about what we carry inside. You nod, staring into the flames, feeling the weight of what's come and what's yet to come. Maurice curls in your lap, a small comfort in a world bristling with danger. Outside the firelight, The forest whispers secrets you're only beginning to understand. The morning mist clings low over the river as you prepare to cross with the warriors, the cold biting through your russet cloak. The current gurgles softly beneath the rickety wooden bridge, patched together with rough-hewn planks and rope that creaks ominously with every step. You can taste the dampness in the air, mingle with the earthy scent of mud and moss. Bruni scans the far bank, eyes narrowing beneath his hood, calculating the risks of this crossing. Whether Roman scouts lurk beyond the trees or the water itself will betray you. Maurice darts ahead, tail flicking, nose twitching at something unseen. You follow, heart pounding as the warriors silently fan out, weapons at the ready. Crossing here means venturing deeper into enemy territory, but the promise of disrupting Roman supply lines is too tempting to resist. You step carefully, feeling the wooden board shift beneath your weight. Below, fish dart in the shadows, oblivious to the danger above. Once across, the group moves swiftly through a meadow heavy with wildflowers, their colors dulled by the overcast sky. Indigo, saffron, and russet petals bending under the weight of morning dew. The calm contrasts sharply with the tension in your chest. Suddenly, a horn sounds, a distant, haunting note that sends a ripple through the warriors. Bruni signals a halt, and you crouch behind a cluster of elder trees. The sound is repeated, Roman patrols closing in fast. The warriors ready their spears and shields, faces steel with resolve. You catch your breath and grip your own weapon tighter, knowing there's no turning back now. Historians still argue whether the Germanic warriors preferred swift, hit-and-run tactics or brutal, close-quarters combat. But here, you feel the truth lies somewhere in between, a deadly blend of cunning and courage. The clash is sudden and fierce. Wooden shields thudding, iron striking iron, shouts mingling with the cry of birds startled from their nests. You fight with all your might, muscles burning, heart racing as you hold the line beside Bruni and the others. When the dust settles, silence falls heavy, broken only by the soft whimper of Maurice, who's managed to avoid injury once again. The enemy is pushed back, but the cost is clear in the weary faces of your companions. You know this battle is but one thread in a long and tangled tapestry of war. As night approaches, you find a quiet glade to rest, the moon casting pale silver light through canopy. Eleanor tends to small wounds, whispering words of comfort and hope. You lie back against a bed of ferns, eyes tracing the stars blinking softly above, and wonder what dawn will bring. Dawn breaks pale and hesitant, the sky a wash of soft grays and faded indigo, as you wake to the rustle of leaves and distant bird calls. The air is cool, carrying the scent of damp earth and crushed pine needles beneath your fingers. Around you, the warriors stir, their movements slow but deliberate, each one preparing for what lies ahead. Bruni, ever vigilant, examines a map drawn on parchment, lines and symbols curling like ancient runes. His brow furrows as he traces the routes, weighing options between stealth and speed. You feel the weight of your gear against your back, the familiar chill of your iron dagger at your side, a comforting reminder in this uncertain world. The forest around you feels alive, watching. You recall that historians still argue whether Germanic warriors' intimate knowledge of their wooded homelands gave them a decisive edge against the more heavily armored Romans, or if sheer ferocity mattered more. The morning sun weakly pierces the canopy, casting mottled shadows on the mossy floor as you prepare to move out. Suddenly, a faint crunch breaks the silence, a stray twig snapping underfoot. Eyes sharpen, spears and axes are raised, but Bruni motions for silence, recognizing the approach of a solitary figure. A messenger clad in faded teal, breath ragged. He carries news that the Roman legate is mustering reinforcements, intent on crushing your band before they can strike again. The mood tightens like a drawn bow. You feel the undercurrent of fear mingling with adrenaline, a familiar companion on this perilous path. That afternoon, you navigate a steep hillside, sweat mingling with the dust of dry leaves underfoot. The landscape shifts, open fields bordered by thorny hedgerows, a stark contrast to the deep woods you've come to know. Here, you spot scattered remnants of old battlefields, rusted helmets half buried, fragments of shattered shields, a silent testament to countless conflicts past. Eleanor murmurs a prayer to the old gods, her voice low and steady. fingers tracing an iron pendant hanging from her neck. You feel the strange comfort of her presence, a fragile anchor in the chaos. The warriors rest briefly by a bubbling brook, drinking from wooden bowls and sharing muted stories. Night draws near once more, and as you prepare a small fire, the flickering flames illuminate faces marked with grime and determination. You wonder how many such nights these warriors have faced. Cold, hungry, yet unbroken. The question lingers as the fire's glow dances across the trees. Are these warriors defined more by their weapons or their unyielding spirit? Historians still debate whether the Germanic tribes were the architects of their own doom or simply caught in the tides of empire. You close your eyes, letting the sound of crackling wood and rustling leaves lull you toward a restless sleep. You awake to a sky smeared with soft blush and gold, the first light filtering through the canopy like delicate stained glass. The air is cooler now, tinged with the faint scent of wild herbs and the earthy musk of damp soil. Around you, the camp stirs, Bruni and the others sharpening their blades with rough stones, the sound of rhythmic scrape that blends with morning bird calls. You notice Maurice, your loyal companion from earlier tales, would have been here if only time allowed, but today it's the scent of pine and damp that keep you company. The path ahead is narrow, winding deeper into dense woodland, where shadows gather like whispered secrets. You tighten your cloak, feeling the reassuring weight of your wooden shield strapped to your back. It's strange how historians still argue whether the Germanic tribes' reliance on lighter armor and shields was a tactical choice born of necessity or a symbol of cultural identity. Either way, it means moving swift and silent. Midway through the morning, you cross a small, murky stream where dragonflies dart above the water, their iridescent wings flashing like tiny jewels. You pause to drink from a wooden cup, savoring the cold, clear water while your mind drifts to a quirky tidbit you once read. Some Germanic warriors use crocodile dung as a crude sunscreen. Effective? Debatable, but it certainly makes you appreciate modern lotions. Ahead, the forest opens to reveal a small clearing, dotted with wildflowers and framed by towering oaks gilded faintly by early light. You sense eyes watching, either unseen animals or perhaps scouts from a rival tribe. The tension tightens. Every snap of a twig feels amplified, every breath held. Eleanor tightens her grip on a slender bough, while Bruni signals a silent halt, scanning the tree line. In this moment, you reflect on the enduring debate among scholars. Were these warriors driven by a fearsome reputation that preceded them, or did their legends grow from acts of desperation and survival? You can't help but think it's a little of both. As the sun climbs higher, you ready yourself to step back into the shadowy embrace of the forest. The pulse of history and myth beating around you like a drum. The forest seems to close in tighter now, shadows thickening beneath ancient boughs as you and the others tread carefully along a barely visible path. Your boots crunch softly on fallen leaves, each step stirring memories of distant battles and whispered legends. You feel the weight of history pressing down, a feeling as tangible as a rough bark beneath your fingertips. The Germanic warriors were known for their fierce loyalty, a bond that turned small bands into unstoppable forces, and you can almost hear their battle cries echoing through the trees. As you pause to catch your breath, you notice the subtle glint of iron through the undergrowth, an old spearhead, rusted but unmistakable. It's a quiet reminder that these woods have seen conflict, blood spilled for honor or survival. Historians still argue whether their tactics were primarily guerrilla skirmishes or organized charges, but here, in the forest's hush, the distinction blurs. A curious detail comes to mind. Some tribes adorn their shield with animal hides not just for protection, but to intimidate enemies. Imagine a shield covered in wolf pelts, snarling eyes painted in vivid reds and blacks. You can't help but smirk at the thought. It's like medieval cosplay with a side of deadly seriousness. Suddenly, a distant howl breaks the silence. Perhaps a wolf, or maybe a rival scout signaling danger. Eleanor tightens her grip on her bow, eyes sharp beneath a hood dyed deep indigo, while Bruni quietly signals for everyone to ready their weapons. The tension coils like a spring, ready to snap. You remind yourself of the stories you've heard. These warriors were as much masters of psychological warfare as physical combatants, using fear as a weapon as potent as any sword. It's no wonder their reputation still sends a shiver down modern spines. You glance skyward, where the canopy parts briefly to reveal a patch of pale blue, and steel yourself to step forward, deeper into the unknown. The village appears as a smudge on the horizon, smoke curling faintly from crooked chimneys as the sun dips lower, casting long russet shadows across the thatched roofs. You remember how the Germanic tribes often raided these settlements, striking swiftly and vanishing like ghosts before retaliation could be mustered. Their ferocity was as legendary as their unpredictable nature, a fact that had rulers and peasants alike sleeping with one eye open. Eleanor whispers tales of a particular raid, where a band of warriors donned horned helmets, though historians still argue whether those horns were real or later exaggerations, and charged through enemy lines with thunderous cries. It's hard not to imagine the chaos. Burning torches flickering against the twilight, villagers scrambling for safety, and the warriors' heavy boots pounding earth like a drumbeat of doom. You spot a wooden bucket tipped over near a well, its wicker handle broken. A small detail, but it speaks volumes of sudden upheaval. Nearby, a wicker basket lies abandoned, its contents spilled, wild herbs and a small loaf of bread, perhaps dropped in haste. These small traces of daily life disrupted lend a poignant edge to the brutal history. As you approach the village gate, Maurice, still limping but ever loyal, brushes past your feet, nose twitching at the scent of smoke and something fouler. You feel the weight of their legacy settle around you, a mixture of awe and apprehension. These were not just warriors. They were survivors, masters of adapting to chaos with cunning and courage. You catch Eleanor's glance. She's scanning rooftops, alert for any sign of trouble. The silence here feels heavy, waiting for the inevitable storm to break once more. You steady your breathing and step into the village square, ready to face whatever memories or dangers lie ahead. The sun slides behind a ragged line of trees, and dusk settles in, softening the harsh edges of the village. You and Eleanor make your way toward the old blacksmith's forge, now cold and silent, the air thick with the faint scent of soot and rusted iron. You can almost hear the clang of hammer on anvil, the rhythmic beat that once shaped weapons meant for war and survival. Blacksmiths were crucial to the Germanic tribes. Their skill could turn simple iron into a fearsome axe or a deadly spear. Historians still argue whether these weapons were purely practical or also served symbolic purposes, like status markers or ritual tools. You run your fingers along the worn handle of a wooden bucket, leaning against the forge's stone wall, imagining the hands that might have filled it with water or carried coal to feed the fire. Maurice sniffs at a pile of scrap metal, and you can't help but grin. His curiosity never fades, even amid tales of ancient warriors. Nearby, a rusted iron fire tongue lies forgotten, its twisted form catching the last glimmers of daylight like a relic from a long-lost battle. Eleanor pulls out a faded parchment from her pack, tracing the rough sketches of warriors in horned helmets, their bodies decorated with swirling patterns. They were not just fighters, but storytellers, she murmurs. Their art and battle cries preserve memories as much as their swords did. You nod, feeling the layers of time wrap around you like a thick cloak. In this quiet forge, the echoes of fierce battles and whispered legends coexist, blending into the twilight's gentle hum. The forest thickens as you tread deeper, the evening shadows folding around you like a soft, dark cloak. Twigs snap underfoot, and the cool scent of damp earth rises, mingling with the sharp tang of pine. You're hunting for the hermit's hut again, a place whispered about in village tales, where old magic and forgotten knowledge linger like mist. The path feels endless, every gnarled root and drooping branch a reminder that the forest isn't just background, it's a living, watching entity. Maurice limps slightly, but his sharp eyes never miss a detail. Germanic warriors often fought not only with steel, but with cunning, using the terrain to their advantage. Ambushes from thick woods or sudden strikes from shadowed hills. Historians still argue whether their fearsome reputation grew more from their skill in battle or the legend spun afterward by enemies and allies alike. Eleanor moves quietly beside you, clutching a wooden bucket carved with runes, possibly used for ritual offerings or gathering water from sacred springs. The flicker of your torch casts dancing shadows on ancient trees, while overhead, the first stars peek out, cold, distant witnesses to the unfolding night. You pause, breath caught between hope and dread, and realize that in this place, Every sound feels amplified. The soft rustle of leaves, Morris's low growl, and the whispered question hanging in the air. How fearsome were these warriors, really? You find the hermit's hut nestled beneath ancient oaks, its walls worn and patched with moss, smoke curling faintly from the crooked chimney. Inside, the air smells of herbs and dried bark, a comforting yet eerie mix. Shelves sag under jars filled with strange roots and powders, and a brittle book lies open on a wooden table. Yellowed pages covered in tangled runes and faded script. Eleanor carefully traces the lines, whispering about the spiral of protection and its broken, dangerous twin, the broken circle. You feel a chill, a sense that these symbols carry power far beyond simple marks. The Germanic warriors weren't just fierce fighters. Some also practiced rituals and carried talismans, blending warcraft with what others called superstition. A quirky tidbit. Some tribes believed their weapons held spirits, often naming their swords or spears, treating them almost as living companions. Historians still argue whether these spiritual practices were essential to their strength or later romanticized to explain their battlefield successes. As you turn the brittle parchment, the firelight flickers, and you wonder if breaking such protection could truly invite unseen dangers. Outside, Maurice rests at the threshold, ears twitching at every forest whisper, as you and Eleanor absorb the weight of secrets older than the village itself. Night deepens around you, the forest thick with shadows that seem to breathe. The fire you made flickers low, casting dancing shapes on Eleanor's face as she carves symbols into a small piece of wood, her hands steady but her eyes wary. Maurice lies close, his limp paw a quiet reminder that danger lingers just beyond your circle of light. The stars peer through the canopy, cold and distant, offering little comfort tonight. Germanic warriors often fought under the cover of darkness, using stealth and surprise to unsettle their foes, their war cries echoing to the trees like the howls of wild beasts. A fringe belief among some tribes held that the spirits of ancestors guided their blades, whispering courage in the night. Historians still argue whether these nocturnal raids were purely tactical or intertwined with ritualistic ceremonies meant to invoke protection and wrath. You watch Eleanor's fingers trace the carving, feeling the heavy silence press in, knowing the forest's watchful gaze is far from kind. The chill settles deep in your bones as the fire dwindles, and the uneasy quiet reminds you that tomorrow's trials will be no gentler. The cold morning air bites at your skin as dawn creeps over the horizon, washing the forest in pale indigo and saffron hues. You rise slowly, muscles stiff but senses alert, knowing the village awaits with heavy silence and suspicion. Maurice limps beside you, paw bandaged with rough linen, eyes flicker with both pain and fierce loyalty. Eleanor wraps the hermit's book tight to her chest, her russet cloak stained with dew and ash. Germanic warriors were as much creatures of routine as of chaos, often preparing for battle with sacred rites at first light, blessing their weapons, painting symbols on their bodies, seeking favor from gods both fierce and fickle. Oddly enough, some tribes believe that carrying a piece of burnt wood from a sacred fire could ward off curses, a superstitious practice historians debate was widespread or localized. As you step from the forest's edge toward the village, the air thickens with tension, faces watching from shuttered windows and behind tightly closed doors. The spiral on the chapel door still looms, defiant and scorn, a symbol twisted between protection and menace in the minds of your people. You steady yourself, knowing that the day ahead made a man more courage than any warrior's blade. Night falls softly once more, the moon's silver light dappling to the skeletal branches above as you settle beside a small, crackling fire in the forest's quiet heart. Maurice curls close, his gentle purring a soothing counterpoint to the restless whisper of leaves and distant owl calls. Eleanor's eyes, still sharp despite exhaustion, trace the faded lines of the hermit's book by firelight, pondering the broken spiral and the shadow it casts over your village. The air is thick with unspoken fears and the weight of uncertain tomorrows. Germanic warriors, fierce and relentless in battle, also knew the value of quiet moments like this. Times to reflect, to heal, to prepare their minds for what was yet to come. Some scholars argue that their strength lay not only in weapons and war cries, but in these subtle rituals of resilience and community, a balance between the savage and the sacred. You breathe in the cool night air, letting the forest cradle you in its uneasy embrace. Outside, The village sleeps fitfully beneath a veil of suspicion and fear, while you rest here, caught between worlds, waiting for dawn and whatever fate it might bring. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together.